Can I sit here?
Bo Tanner hooked his boot around the empty chair and dragged it out of reach just as the man on the crutch reached for it. "Take the dog and get out. I'm eating." The Navy SEAL did not argue. He nodded, once shifted his weight off the bad side and moved to the next table. And the next. 5 tables in 90 seconds. 5 reasons. 5 people who could not look at him while they said them. Then a waitress named Marin slid a stool out from the counter and told him he could sit there. He asked if he could sit, and before she could answer, his canine locked up, stared straight at her, and walked away from his handler. If you believe the people who carry the most are usually the ones nobody looks at. Twice subscribe and stay with me all the way to the end, because this one does not go where you think it goes. And drop the city you are watching from in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. Bo Tanner did not put the chair back. He set his boot on the rung and left it there, angled away from the table like a door he had closed on purpose, and he went back to his eggs with the particular calm of a man who has never once been made to answer for anything. Around him, the blue kettle kept doing what it did at 8 in the morning. Forks moved. The register drawer banged. Somebody laughed too loud near the window and then stopped laughing because the laugh landed in a room that had gone quieter than it was a second earlier, and there was nowhere for it to go. Daniel Mercer took the refusal the way he took most things now, which was without comment. He adjusted the forearm crutch, took the weight off the prosthetic he was still not friends with after 4 years, and turned toward the 2 men in the first booth. "Morning," when he said, "Mind if I take the end of this?" The one nearest him looked at the folded pant leg first. They always did. Then he looked at the twin, then he looked at his own coffee, and he said, "We got somebody coming." Their plates were wiped. One of them already had his jacket across his knees. "Understood," Mercer said. "Appreciate it anyway." He moved on. The young couple in the second booth saw him coming and performed a small, silent negotiation between themselves, and by the time he arrived, the woman was suddenly very interested in her phone, and the man had slid to the middle of the bench in a way that made the seat unavailable without a single word being spoken. Mercer nodded to them like they had been generous. The family with the 2 kids at least had the decency to be embarrassed. The mother said they were about to spread out, and she smiled while she said it, and the smile was the worst part because it asked him to help her feel fine about it. He gave her what she wanted. He said, "Of course," and he said, "Have a good breakfast," and he moved. The trucker at the Four Tops said he was saving it. "For how many?" Mercer asked, and there was nothing sharp in it. He genuinely asked. "Just saving it," the trucker said, and looked out the window at a lot with 1 truck in it. That was 4. The 5th was Tanner, who had already dealt with him and who now decided the room needed narration. "Hell of a show," Tanner said loud enough to carry to the kitchen. "Guy walks in with a dog and expects everybody to stand up and salute. This ain't the VA, buddy, it's a diner." Nobody defended him. That was the thing Marin Callahan noticed standing behind the counter with a coffee pot going cold in her hand. Not the cruelty. The cruelty was one man, and one man was survivable. What she noticed was 30 people deciding at the same time to become extremely busy with their food, and she felt something old and unwelcome start to move behind her ribs, the same thing that used to move when a convoy slowed for no reason. She had been counting the room without meaning to since the door chimed. 2 exits, kitchen pass at her back. The man on the crutch had come in and stopped for a half second inside the door. See, not because his eyes were adjusting, but because he was clearing the space, and she had known what that half second was from across 40 feet of linoleum. She put the pot down. She reached over and hooked the end stool with 2 fingers and pulled it out from the counter. "Sir," she said, "you can sit here." Mercer turned. He looked at her for a beat longer than the offer required. "You sure?" he said. "I seem to be radioactive this morning." "It's a stool," Marin said. "It's not a favor." Garrett Ostro came out of the back office before Mercer had crossed half the floor. He came out fast, wiping his hands on a towel he had not used for anything, and he got in beside Marin at the register and spoke without moving his mouth much. "What are you doing?" "Seating a customer. That animal is a health issue. It's a service dog, and you know it's a service dog. Bo Tanner spends $400 a month in here." "Then Bo Tanner can afford to be polite," Marin said, and she was already turning away, and that turn cost her something she would not know the price of for another 2 hours. Mercer reached the counter. He set the crutch against the lip of it, took the stool, the way an amputee takes a stool, which is carefully and from the correct side, and the Malinois came in beside him and folded down without being told. Ma'am, Mercer said, would it be all right if I sat here? And the dog stood up. It happened fast enough that the man 2 stools down flinched. The Malinois came off the floor in one motion, ears forward, body locked, absolutely rigid, and it was not looking at the door or at the kitchen or at Tanner. It was looking at Marin Callahan's face. Kilo, Mercer said, down. The dog did not go down. It stepped out from under its handler's hand, crossed in front of the stools, and sat directly in front of Marin. Squared up, chest out, front paws. Even the posture a working dog gives to exactly one kind of person for exactly one kind of reason. The blue kettle went silent in pieces. The nearest tables first, then the middle of the room, then the booths by the window, and then even Tanner, who had opened his mouth to say something and found the room had left him behind. Kilo, heel. Nothing. The dog's tail moved once against the floor and stopped, and it kept its eyes on her. Marin stood very still. She was aware of her own pulse in a way she had not been in years, and she was aware that a phone had come up somewhere behind her left shoulder, and she was aware most of all that her left hand had gone into the dish towel without her deciding to put it there. He does not do this, Mercer said quietly. He's a dog, Marin said. Dogs like people. Ma'am, that dog has ignored every human being he has met for 4 years. He ignores children. He ignored a woman at a gas station in Rawlins who fed him half a sandwich. Mercer leaned forward an inch. He is not saying hello. He is reporting. Marin picked the pot back up. Her hand was steady. She had made her hand be steady in worse rooms than this one. You want coffee or not? Black, Mercer said. Please. She poured it. She poured a refill for the man. 2 stools down, who was pretending not to watch and doing a terrible job. She wiped a clean section of counter because her hands needed a job, and the whole time the dog sat in front of her like a sentry who had found his post after a long walk. Have we met? Mercer asked. No. It came out fast. Too fast, and she heard it herself the way you hear your own voice crack on a radio and know that everybody heard it too. Mercer did not push. He wrapped both hands around the mug and looked at the counter for a while, and that was worse than pushing, because a man who does not push is a man who is willing to wait, and Marin had spent 8 years relying on people getting bored. Long time working here, he asked. 5 years. Before that, around. Around, Mercer repeated, and there was no accusation in it at all, which was how she knew he had already decided something. Across the room, Tanner had found his voice again and was using it on Ostro, who had drifted over to his table with the towel still in his hand. That thing needs a muzzle, Tanner said. I got a right to eat breakfast without a war dog staring people down. It's handled, Bo. Doesn't look handled. Looks like your girl's running a petting zoo. Marin did not turn around. She heard Ostro apologize. She heard him actually apologize to a man who had dragged a chair away from an amputee 10 minutes earlier. And she felt the thing behind her ribs shift again and settle into a shape she recognized and did not want. A bus tub slipped off the edge of the prep shelf behind her. She had it before it left the shelf. She did not look at it. Her hand went back and took the rim and set it flat, and she never stopped facing forward, and it was so fast and so unremarkable to her that she did not understand for a full 3 seconds why the room had gotten quiet again. Mercer had put his mug down. You didn't look, he said. I've worked here 5 years. You didn't look, ma'am. You heard the shelf give, and you had it in your hand before it cleared the edge, and your eyes never left the front door. He said it the way a man reads a number off a page. I have known maybe 9 people in my life who could do that. Every one of them earned it somewhere I would not want to go back to. You're reading a lot into a bus tub. I am reading a lot into the dog, Mercer said. The bus tub is confirmation. Marin set the pot on the burner and turned to the pass and called an order that did not exist because she needed 4 seconds where nobody could see her face. And when she came back, Ostro was waiting at the register with his arms folded. 3 minutes, he said, and then he goes. He hasn't eaten. 3 minutes. Garrett. She kept her voice low and even and completely level, which was the voice she used when she wanted something very badly. 5 tables told a man with 1 leg he could not sit down in your restaurant. And the only person in here you have a problem with is the one who found him a seat. I have a problem with the one who is going to cost me a regular. Then dock me. Oh, I'm going to tonight, Ostro said, and he walked away, and he was not bluffing, and both of them knew it. She came back to the counter. Mercer had not touched the coffee. Kilo had not moved. You want food, she asked. Eggs, wheat toast. He paused. And I want you to know I did not come here for the eggs. Myron wrote the order down. Her handwriting came out fine. Everybody comes here for the eggs, she said. It's the only thing the cook can't ruin. Mercer almost smiled. Then he reached down and put his hand flat on the Malinois's shoulder, and the dog leaned into her leg. Not hard, just resting its weight there, the way an animal does when it has decided you are the safe thing in the room, and something in Marin's chest came loose that she had spent 8 years welding shut. His name is Kilo, Mercer said. He is 9. He did 2 deployments and he has a scar across his left flank. You could lay 3 fingers in. He came off the euthanasia list in Quinto because nobody wanted a dog that screams in his sleep. He watched her hand the one in the towel. His handler was a kid named Wes Duarte, 26 years old, made the best coffee on the compound, and could not tell a joke to save his life. The name did something to Marin's face. It was small. It lasted less than a second. It was the length of a blink and the depth of a well, and Mercer had spent 20 years learning to see exactly that. I don't know that name, she said. I didn't ask if you did. Behind them, a phone camera clicked, and Tanner said something about how some people will make a scene for attention, and a woman in the third booth told him quietly, and for the first time all morning, to shut up. He looked around for support. He did not get very much. Marin realized her towel had slipped. Her left hand was on the counter, uncovered in full view for maybe 2 seconds. The graft ran from the wrist up under the sleeve in a pale sheet that did not match the rest of her. The ring finger and the middle finger ended at the second joint, clean and old, and healed a long time ago. She got the towel back over it. She did it smoothly. She had gotten very good at doing it smoothly. Mercer did not say a word, but he had gone completely still and his jaw had set, and when he finally lifted his eyes to her face, he was not looking at a waitress anymore. He was looking at an answer. Ma'am, he said, orders in, it'll be 6 minutes. Ma'am, I said 6 minutes. Mercer reached inside his jacket. Everything in the room tracked the motion because a room that has been holding its breath for 15 minutes will track anything. And what came out was a photograph folded twice soft at the creases from being carried a very long time. He set it face down on the counter beside his coffee and put one finger on it. I left San Diego 11 days ago, he said. I have been in 9 states. I have walked into 41 places like this one and asked 41 people questions they did not want to answer, and every single one of them was the wrong person. And I was starting to think the woman I am looking for died in 2018, and nobody bothered to write it down. The dog had not looked away from her once. I have driven 2,300 miles chasing a ghost, Mercer said, and I am not leaving this counter until you turn that over and look at it. Marin did not turn it over. She looked at the back of that photograph for maybe 3 seconds, and in those 3 seconds, she did the arithmetic she had done every morning for 8 years. Rent, Toby, the school bus that came at 7:40, the way a life gets built out of small, boring things that only hold together if nobody looks too closely at the foundation. Then she picked up the coffee pot and walked away from it. 6 minutes on your eggs, she said. She worked the counter around that photograph for the next 20 minutes, the way she had once worked a road around a wire. She refilled cups on either side of it. She wiped down 2 feet to the left and 2 feet to the right. She never once let her hand pass over it, and Mercer watched her not do it, and neither of them said a word about the fact that avoidance that careful is its own kind of confession. Ostro docked her before the eggs came up. He did it at the register with the drawer open, which was on purpose because he wanted the sound of money in it while he said it. Thursday's off your schedule. Thursday is my double. Thursday is my schedule and I'll fill it how I want. Garrett, I've got a kid. You've got an attitude, Ostro said, and you've got a customer in the corner with his phone out because you decided this morning was a good morning to make a statement. Marin looked past him at Tanner, who did in fact have his phone out, angled up, filming her from 40 feet with the loose confidence of a man who had never in his life been asked to explain himself. He dragged a chair out from under an amputee, she said, and you almost lost me $400 a month over it. So it's $400. Everything's a number, Marin. That's what running a business is. He shoved the drawer shut. Table 9 wants ketchup. She brought Table 9 their ketchup. She brought Mercer his eggs and set them down and did not look at him. And the dog leaned into her leg again, and she stood there half a second longer than she needed to before she pulled away. That was when Tanner knocked the mug over. It was not an accident, and nobody in the building pretended it was. He reached out with two fingers as she passed and tipped a full cup of coffee across the counter, and it ran off the edge and down the front of her apron and onto her shoes, and he said, "Whoops," in a voice designed to carry. Somebody laughed. One person. Then they heard themselves and stopped. Marin got a towel. She got down on one knee and cleaned the floor first because the floor was the hazard, and she cleaned it thoroughly while Tanner watched her do it with his phone still up. "That's the whole trick to this job, isn't it?" he said. "Smile and mop." She stood up. Her face gave him nothing at all. "Anything else, Bo?" "Refill." She poured it. She set it down. She got 2 steps away, and he tipped that one over too. The sound the second mug made hitting the counter was not loud, but the room changed shape around it, and Mercer set his fork down with a precision that was more frightening than shouting would have been. And the old man in the corner booth, the one who had eaten dry toast at that table every morning for 11 years and had not said a full sentence to anyone all week, turned his head for the first time. "Bo," said the woman in the third booth, "that's enough. Mind your business, Carol." "That is my business. I'm sitting in it." Ostro came out fast, and Marin watched him make his choice in real time, watched him look at Tanner and look at the mess and look at the $400 a month, and then she watched him turn to her and say, "Get a mop." Something in her went very quiet then. Not angry. Quiet. It was the quiet that used to come over her when the truck stopped and she got out and the world narrowed down to about 9 feet of dirt and nothing else existed. She got the mop. Mercer spoke while she worked. He did not raise his voice, and he did not look at Tanner, and later she would understand that he was doing it deliberately, feeding her something to hold on to. "Working dogs run on scent memory," he said, "not faces. People always think it's faces. It's not. A dog can hold a scent profile for years, and the ones that stick hardest are the ones attached to something that hurt." He turned the mug slowly. "Kilo has been in gas stations and hardware stores and 2 airports. He has been past 10,000 people. He does not break position. He has never once broken position. Maybe he's getting old." "I is getting old. That's not what this is." Mercer glanced down at the Malinois still squared up, still facing her. "I have seen him do this exactly one other time. In a parking lot in Coronado in front of a corpsman who worked on him in 2018. Dog knocked him flat and would not get off him." Marin wrung out the mop. "You want more coffee or not? You keep asking me about coffee. You keep telling me about teas." The man 2 stools down, a welder named Ray Petrosky, who had been listening to every word while pretending to read the same page of a newspaper for half an hour, cleared his throat. "Ma'am," he said, "you dropped your towel." She looked down. It had slipped off her wrist when she wrung the mop, and her left hand was flat on the counter, uncovered in the open. And this time it stayed there for 4 seconds instead of 2, because she was too tired to be fast about it. Petrosky saw it, and his face did something complicated. He had spent 22 years around torches and presses, and he knew what a burn looked like, and he knew this was not a burn. Mercer saw it and stopped breathing for a moment, because it was not a machine injury. Machines take fingers cleanly, and they take them one way. This was a graft that ran from the wrist to somewhere under the sleeve, and 2 fingers ended at the second joint. And the pattern of it, the direction of it, the way the damage climbed up the arm and not down meant the force had come from below and from close, and it had come fast. "Ma'am," Mercer said, and his voice had changed. Marin pulled the towel back over her hand. "Don't. I haven't said anything. You've been saying it for an hour." And then Tanner stood up. He had lost the room, and he could feel it, and men like Bo Tanner do not get quieter when they lose a room. And he came across the floor with his phone in one hand and stopped behind Mercer's stool. "Hey, hero." He said it right into the back of the man's head. "You done because you've been sitting there working this woman for an hour and a half. This town's watching you do it. I'm finishing my eggs. You're finishing up and getting out." Mercer turned his head maybe 15 degrees. "Sir, I'd take a step back." "Or what?" "Or nothing," Mercer said. "That's the point. Just take a step back." Tanner kicked the crutch. He did it with the side of his boot, almost casual, and the crutch went out from under the counter lip and clattered across the floor, and Mercer came off the stool sideways. Because a man with one leg and no crutch does not have a good option, and he went down hard onto his hip. Kilo came up off the floor with a sound that was not a bark, and Marin got there first. Nobody in the blue kettle could say afterward how she cleared the counter. Petrosky said she came over it. Carol in the third booth said she came around the end, and it just did not look like a person moving that far that fast. What they agreed on was that Bo Tanner, 240 pounds of him, went face down onto the linoleum with his own arm folded up behind his shoulder and his wrist rolled the wrong direction. And that from the moment his boot left the crutch to the moment his cheek hit the floor was under 2 seconds. And that the woman doing it was not breathing hard. "Let go," Tanner said. His voice had gone very high. "Let go of my arm." "I'm going to try," Marin said. She said it completely level, almost kind of way you talk to somebody in shock. "I'm going to let go now, and you're going to stay down for a second and get your breath all right. Nothing's broken. Your shoulder's fine. Just stay down." She let go. She stood up and stepped back 3 feet and put her hands where he could see them, and that detail, the hands, was the one Mercer would remember longest. Nobody in the room made a sound. The grill hissed. A phone was recording. The old man in the corner booth set his coffee cup down in its saucer with a click that everybody heard. Tanner got up slowly, holding his shoulder, and he looked around for somebody to be outraged with him and found 30 faces looking back at him like he was something they had stepped in. "You all saw that," he said. "We saw all of it, Bo," Carol said. Ostro was standing in the middle of his own restaurant with his mouth open. Mercer was still on the floor. He had not tried to get up. He was sitting there with his back against the counter and his crutch 6 feet away, and he was looking up at Marin Callahan with an expression that had nothing to do with the fall, where he said, "Did you learn that?" She did not answer him. Petrosky brought the crutch over. Two men from the window booth, the same two who had told Mercer they were waiting for somebody, came and got him under the arms and lifted him back onto the stool, and neither of them could look at him while they did it, and one of them said, "Sorry, buddy," in a voice that meant more than the words. Marin went behind the counter. Her hands had started shaking, which they always did afterward, 30 seconds late, like they had to wait their turn. "Get out," Ostro said. She looked up. "What?" "You put a customer on the floor." He kicked a crutch out from under an amputee. "You put a paying customer on the floor of my restaurant." Ostro's voice cracked in the middle of it. He was scared, and scared men reach for the nearest thing they can control. "Apron. Now, Tom." "Garrett. Now." And that was when Marin Callahan reached across the counter, turned the photograph over, and looked at it. It was a training yard, bright sunshine linked dirt. A young Belgian Malinois, maybe 14 months mid-puppy sprawl, with his tongue out and his ears too big for his head, and a woman kneeling beside him with her face turned away from the camera, laughing at something off frame, her hand resting flat on the dog's left flank. Her left hand, whole, all 5 fingers, no graft. Marin made a sound. It was not a word. It was the sound a person makes when something they have been holding above their head for 8 years finally gets too heavy, and she put her ruined hand over her mouth, and it did not help at all. "Turn it over," Mercer said quietly. She turned it over. On the back and ballpoint, in a young man's terrible handwriting, Kilo 14MO. "Lantern 2 says he'll never pass. $20 says he does. WD." "Wes wrote that," Mercer said. "In 2016, he carried it in his plate carrier, and it was in his personal effects, and it came to me in a box 4 years later, and I have been looking at the back of a stranger's head ever since." Marin could not put it down. "The dog has a scar across his left flank," Mercer said. "Crush injury, left side from the hip forward. You could lay 3 fingers in it." He waited. "You want to tell me what happened to your left hand, ma'am, or do you want me to tell you where I think it happened?" Kilo pushed his head under her hand. "Not the good one. The one in the towel." He pushed his head up under it and held there, and Marin Callahan stood in the middle of the Blue Kettle Diner in front of 30 people with a dead man's photograph in one hand and a 9-year-old dog's skull under the other, and finally stopped being able to hold her face still. "He was 26, she said. The room did not move. "He made coffee in a French press," she said. "In Iraq. He carried a French press through 2 deployments, and he could not tell a joke to save his life." Mercer closed his eyes. Ostro said, "Marin, the apron," and nobody in the entire building even turned to look at him. And outside in the gravel lot, a sheriff's cruiser rolled in slow past the window and stopped with its nose to the door. She got about 40 feet before she heard the dog. Kilo came through the delivery door behind her at a dead run, and he did not stop at her heels the way a trained animal stops. He got in front of her and turned and put his body across her shins. And when she stepped around him, he did it again and again until she stopped walking, because there was no version of this where she got past him without hurting him. "Go back," she said. He sat down on her feet. Mercer came out the same door a full minute later, working the crutch across gravel that was not built for it, breathing hard by the time he got halfway. "Kilo, heel." The dog did not even turn his head. "He's not going to," Marin said. "I know." "Then stop saying it." Mercer stopped 10 feet short of her, which she noticed and which she was grateful for and would not have admitted. "I'm not going to apologize to you out here," he said. "Good. I mean it. I thought about it for 3 years, and I've got about 9 versions of it, and every single one of them is for me." He shifted his weight. "You don't need a speech. You need the thing I actually brought." "I don't want anything you brought." "Yes, you do," Mercer said. "You just don't know what it is yet." He got it out of the truck. It took him a while, and she stood there the whole time with a dog on her feet in 38 degrees and no coat. And when he came back, he was holding a folder that had been opened and closed so many times the corners had gone soft. "Board for correction of naval records," he said. "Petition to void your separation and correct your record. Filed 18 months ago. I paid a lawyer in Alexandria more money than I have ever spent on anything, and she is good, and she has been waiting for one thing this entire time." Marin did not take it. "There's a hearing date," Mercer said, 11 days out, and right now that petition is one man's word against a signed after-action report, and the man is me, and I am the guy who signed the report, so my word is worth about what you'd expect." "So it's nothing." "It's nothing," Mercer agreed, "unless somebody who was physically inside that courtyard stands up in that room and says what the tile felt like." And there it was sitting in the gravel between them. Marin laughed. "It came out wrong. You want me to go to Washington?" "Yes. I have a 9-year-old at home. I know about Toby. Don't say his name." "Your sister died in Trina," Mercer said quietly. "Overdose. You had custody within 6 weeks. You have never missed a rent payment in 5 years. And you drive a truck with 190,000 miles on it, and you got fired 40 minutes ago." He held the folder out. "I have known about you for 3 years, ma'am. I did not come here casually. That's supposed to make me feel better." "No." "Then no," Marin said. "Marin, no." She said it hard. "You want to know what I built out here? I built a life where nobody asks. That's it. That's the whole thing. Nobody in this town knew a single thing about me until an hour ago, and now 30 people have it on their phones, and my kid is going to hear about it at school before I can get home and tell him myself." Her voice cracked on kid, and she hated it. "I did not build boring by accident, Senior Chief. I built it on purpose. It took me 8 years, and you burned it down before your eggs got cold." Mercer took that. He did not defend himself. "You're right," he said. She turned and walked to her truck. By 4 that afternoon, it was everywhere. Somebody's phone video 42 seconds of it. 5 tables refusing a man on a crutch and a waitress sliding out a stool. That was the version that went first, and it went the way those things go. And by 6, there were 3 more angles, and by 9, there was one that had all of it, including a 240-pound man face down on the linoleum and a woman with a ruined hand telling him nothing was broken. Bridgeline, Wyoming had 4,000 people in it, and by Wednesday morning, it had 11 news vans. Toby heard about it at school. He heard about it from a 5th grader whose mother had been in the 3rd booth, and he came home and put his backpack down and said, "Is it true you were in the war?" Marin sat down on the arm of the couch. "Yeah," she said. "Is it true you carried a dog?" "Yeah." Toby thought about that for a while, the way 9-year-olds do, chewing on the inside of his cheek. "Why didn't you tell me?" And Marin Callahan, who had faced down an interrogation room in Landstuhl, and a 240-pound man, and 8 years of her own silence, could not answer her sister's kid. They started showing up at the trailer on Thursday. Not reporters. Reporters she could handle, she just did not open the door. It was the regulars 1 and 2 at a time, standing in the dirt with their hats in their hands. And every one of those conversations was excruciating for both parties, and every one of them happened anyway. Doug Halleck came and said he had lied about waiting for somebody and that he had been sitting with it for 4 days and it was not getting better. The trucker came and did not say much and left a $50 bill under a rock on the step, which she found later and did not know what to do with. Carol brought a casserole and cried in the driveway and apologized for crying. Ray Petrosky came on Friday and said, I fabricate 22 years. If you ever want work that isn't waiting tables, I got a shop and I got nobody in it. And on Saturday morning, Hollis Pike drove out. He was 78 years old and he had eaten dry toast and black coffee in the corner booth of the Blue Kettle every single morning for 11 years, and Myron had poured that coffee for 5 of them and had never once heard him complete a sentence. He would not come inside. He stood on the step with his hands in his jacket. I sat there 4 days ago, he said, and I watched a man kick a crutch and I didn't get up. Mr. Pike, let me get through it. His jaw was working. 1971, there was a thing that happened with a village and some men I served with, and I was 19 years old and I did not say anything about it. Not that day, not that year. I got home and I got a job and I got married and I have sat down to breakfast every morning of my life since and thought about the thing I did not say. Marin did not move. 11 years I've eaten in that booth, Hollis said. You know what I ordered? Toast, dry, no butter on the plate. You never once asked me a question. He looked up. I thought that was the kindest thing anybody ever did for me. Turns out you were doing it because you needed the same courtesy. He got back in his truck. Halfway there, he stopped. You go to that hearing, when he said. You go because I did not, and I have had 55 years to find out what that costs. That night, Toby found the folder on the kitchen table. She had brought it in on Wednesday and put it there and had not touched it, and he had it open in front of the fridge with a glass of milk in one hand. Mom, he still called her that sometimes. He had started about a year in, and neither of them had ever discussed it. What's a Navy Cross? Myron took the folder out of his hands. Where does it say that? It's on the paper. It says the citation was drafted, and then it says withdrawn. He pointed. What's withdrawn mean? She read the line 4 times. She had never seen it. Nobody had ever told her. Somebody in 2018 had written up a Navy Cross for an EOD tech who knelt on a live secondary to cut a dog out from under a wall, and somebody else had pulled it, and it had gone into a file and stayed there for 8 years while she poured coffee. It means somebody changed their minds, she said. Mercer called Sunday. She almost did not pick up. I've got something, he said. It isn't about you, and I need you to hear the whole thing before you hang up. Then say it fast. Preston Vale retired in 2021. He's a vice president at Errant Defense Solutions now, and he runs their government partnerships division. And 11 days from now, the Navy awards a contract for the working dog procurement and handler training program. Full life cycle, breeding through retirement. A pause. Errant is the presumptive winner. Vale's been the face of the bid for 2 years. There's a photo of him on their website with a Malinois. Marin stood in her kitchen and did not say anything for a long moment. Say that again. The man who pushed 9 guys into a courtyard over a hole call, Mercer said, and then wrote a paragraph blaming the person who made it, is about to be handed every working dog in the United States Navy. Every dog, every handler, every kid like Wes Duarte for the next 10 years. That's not why I do it. I know it's not. I'm telling you anyway because I have spent 3 years being angry at him for what he did to you and to me and to Wes. And last month I found out he's not done. His voice went rough for the first time in the whole conversation. He's not done, Marin. He's just moved on to the part where he gets paid for it. She hung up on him. She sat in the dark for 4 hours. Around 1 in the morning, she went out to the shed with a flashlight and she moved a shelf and she got down a coffee can that had come with her. From a base house in Virginia to an apartment in Denver to a trailer in Ridgeline, and had not been opened in 7 years. She sat on the shed floor and took the lid off. At 2:11, she called him. He picked up on the first ring, which meant he had not been sleeping either. Bring the dog, Marin said, and get your lawyer on the phone because I've got something she's never seen, and Kilo's file is the other half of it. What was in the coffee can was 4 pages of carbon paper. Marin had filled them out at 4 in the morning on the 11th of March 2018, sitting on a cot at the forward base with her left arm splinted to her chest and her right hand shaking so badly a corpsman had to steady the clipboard. An ordnance incident report. Every EOD tech in the Navy filled one out after every device, and the top copy went up the chain, and the yellow carbon went to the technician. She had written it before anybody told her what the story was going to be. The lawyer in Alexandria, a woman named Dana Reyes, who had spent 14 years doing exactly this and had learned not to get excited, went quiet on the phone for 11 seconds after Marin read her the timestamps. Say the entry time again, 0226. And you wrote that at 4 in the morning on the 11th. Corman witnessed it, his signature's on page 3, hospital man second class Ortiz. Ma'am Reyes said, the top copy of that report does not exist in the record. I have pulled everything 3 times. There is no ordnance incident report from that night. Then somebody pulled it. Somebody pulled it, Reyes agreed, which is a different crime than the one we came in here for. That was Sunday. On Monday, Mercer drove Kilo 4 hours to a veterinary records office in Colorado and came out with something none of them had thought to look for, because none of them had thought of the dog as a witness. Military working dogs get medical files, real ones, every treatment, every injury, every timestamp filed by whoever put hands on the animal. And Kilo's file had an entry made in the back of a helicopter by a corpsman who had a crushed Malinois in his lap and no reason on earth to lie about the clock. Crush injury left flank. Treatment initiated 0241. Vale's report says the assault element entered the courtyard at 0217 on my clearance. Marin said when Reyes had the page in front of her. It says the wall came down at 0231. And your dog is already in a helicopter with a corpsman working on him at 0241, Reyes said. 10 minutes. It is not physically possible, Reyes said. And for the first time in 18 months, she sounded like a person and not a lawyer. It is not possible to get a casualty and an 80-pound animal 400 meters to an exfil point and onto a bird and into treatment in 10 minutes. Not with one working arm, not on that ground. So the wall came down earlier. The wall came down when you say it came down, which means the entry happened when you say it happened, which means the 0217 clearance never occurred and every number in that report was moved to make room for a lie. Reyes set the page down. Ma'am, your dog's paperwork breaks the timeline. The dog is the witness. The hearing was in a room with no windows and 11 people in it, which Marin found funny in a way she did not share with anybody. Because the last time somebody had handed her a piece of paper about that night, it had also been in a room with no windows. Toby sat in the second row in a shirt they had bought on the way. Hollis Pike had driven 1,800 miles in a truck older than the boy. Ray Petrosky had closed his shop for 3 days. Carol had organized the whole thing and would not accept thanks for it. And Preston Vale was very, very good. That was the part nobody had prepared her for. She had spent 8 years building him into something with a shape she could hate, and what walked in was a warm, gray-haired, softly spoken man in a good suit who said Wes Duarte's name in the first 90 seconds and let his voice catch on it. He grieved, publicly and convincingly. He said the loss of that young man was the defining tragedy of his career. He said he thought about it constantly. He said that in the fog of a compressed timeline, with fragmentary information decisions get made that a commander carries forever. Then he turned it. I want to be careful here, Vale said, because I have nothing but compassion for Petty Officer Callahan. She was catastrophically injured that night. She lost a friend in front of her. She sustained a traumatic brain injury, which is documented, and I would ask the board to note that it is documented. He let that sit exactly long enough. Memory under those conditions is not a recording. It is a reconstruction. And when a person spends 8 years reconstructing the worst night of their life, they will, without any dishonesty at all, arrive at a version where they were not the one who made the mistake. I have seen it before. It is not a lie. It is grief doing what grief does. Marin watched 2 members of the board write that down. She felt the floor go out from under her because it was reasonable, and it was kind, and it was completely airtight, and it would work. Reyes leaned over and said without moving her lips, he just gave us the whole thing. He just buried me. He built his entire defense on your memory being unreliable, Reyes said. So we're not going to use your memory. Mercer went first. He did not sit down. He stood on the prosthetic without the crutch, which took him 4 seconds longer than it should have, and which nobody in that room failed to notice. Senior Chief Daniel Mercer, United States Navy, retired. I was the task unit commander on the 10th of March, 2018. He looked at the board and then he looked at Vale. I am here to testify against my own endorsement. The recorder's hand stopped moving. I was in the Tactical Operations Center. My ankle was fractured and I was not on the ground, And I heard Lantern 2 call a hold on the net at approximately 0205. I heard her call it 4 times. I heard Lieutenant Commander Vale override that hold. I heard him say, and I have never forgotten the phrasing, Lantern, 2, you are not the ground force commander. Assault element, move. Vale's attorney objected on the grounds of recollection. He can object, Mercer said. He should. My recollection is worth exactly as much as hers is, and Commander Vale just spent 15 minutes explaining why that's nothing. So let me tell the board something my memory has nothing to do with. He put a page on the table. 3 weeks later, I signed the endorsement on the after-action report that ended her career. That is my signature. It is real. I have never once claimed it wasn't. He waited. I read a document that said an EOD technician cleared a courtyard at 0217, and I knew personally that I had heard that same technician calling a hold at 0205 and screaming for a medevac at 0233, and I signed it anyway. Senior Chief said the board president, why? And Mercer said the thing he had come 2,300 miles in 3 years to say out loud. Because I wanted it to be her fault, he said. Because if it was her fault, it wasn't mine. Because I was bearing a 26-year-old kid who made coffee in a French press, and I could not survive it being the fault of the man standing 8 feet from me who I had to keep working for. So I took the version that was written down and I put my name on it, and I have known what I did every day since, and I am telling you now that the document is false, and I am the reason it is official. Nobody in that room said anything for a while. Then Reyes put 4 pages of yellow carbon on the table. Vale's attorney asked for a recess before she had finished reading the second page. He did not get one. Reyes walked the board through it line by line. Entry time 0226, device description, dish chain 2 pressure initiators, estimated 400 pounds of homemade explosive in the base of the north wall. Hold called, hold overridden, override acknowledged on the ground force channel. Signed by the technician at 0402 and witnessed by hospital man second class R. Ortiz, whose signature was on page 3 and who was currently a paramedic in Tucson and who was sitting in the 4th row of that hearing room because Carol had found him in 9 days. This document was never entered into the record, Reyes said. Every other ordnance incident report from that deployment is in the file, 51 of them. This one is not. Counsel, said the board president, are you alleging the record was altered? I'm alleging the record was curated, Reyes said, but I'd rather not rely on Petty Officer Callahan's paperwork or Senior Chief Mercer's memory or anything a human being wrote down that night. She set down the veterinary file. So I'd like to introduce the dog. Kilo came in on a lead held by a boy who was 9 years old because Toby had asked and because Mercer had said yes, and he walked that Malinois down the center of a hearing room in Washington and sat down with him in the 2nd row. Reyes did not need him there. She said so afterward. She had put him in that room for one reason, and she was not sorry. Military working dog, Kilo T2K 419. Multi-purpose canine, retired 2022. On the 10th of March 2018, he sustained a crush injury to the left flank when the north wall of that compound came down on top of him and his handler. She held it up the page. Treatment was initiated by a flight corpsman at 0241. That is a contemporaneous medical entry made by a third party with no interest in this proceeding. She let it hang. Commander Vale's report states the assault element entered the courtyard at 0217 and the wall collapsed at 0231, which requires that a woman with a shattered left hand and a ruptured eardrum extracted an 81-pound animal from beneath a collapsed wall, cut him free, moved him 400 meters over rubble, and delivered him to a helicopter in 10 minutes. She looked at Vale directly for the first time. The dog's own file says it did not happen that way, and unlike everybody else in this room, the Ding has no version of events he prefers. Preston Vale's face did something then that 11 people watched happen. He asked for the recess again. This time he got it. He did not come back into that room the same man who left it. And when the board asked him at 3:40 in the afternoon to account for the discrepancy between his timeline and a corpsman's medical entry, he said the words, I would have to review the underlying data 4 separate times, and by the 4th time, nobody was writing anything down anymore. It took 9 weeks. The Board for Correction of Naval Records voided. Marin Callahan's separation corrected her record to honorable, reinstated, and restored her rate and rank retroactively, and issued 8 years of back pay with interest. The findings stated in plain language that the after-action report of 2018 contained materially false statements regarding the timeline and clearance of the objective, and that the petitioner's conduct on the night in question had been, in the board's word, exemplary. Arendt Defense Solutions lost the working dog contract in 6 days, not 9 weeks. 6 days. Preston Vale was referred to the Department of Justice for false official statement, obstruction, and the removal of a federal record. He surrendered his passport in October. He did not go quietly, and he did not go comfortably. And there is a photograph of him on a courthouse step in a rain jacket that is at this point the first thing that comes up when anybody searches his name. The Navy Cross that had been drafted in 2018 and withdrawn was awarded in March in Coronado, and Toby Callahan sat in the second row in the same shirt because he had refused to wear a different one. Marin bought the blue kettle in June. Garrett Ostro was 3 months behind on a note he had never told anybody about, and the diner had gone from 11 news vans to 11 customers, and he had run out of other options. He signed the papers in his own back office and could not look at her, and said at the very end, "I want you to know I didn't think of myself as that kind of a guy." "I know," Marin said. "That's how it works." She renamed it Duarte's. The gravel lot out back is a kennel now. Nonprofit 16 runs, and it places retired military working dogs with disabled veterans at no cost. And the foundation under it was poured for free by a man named Bo Tanner, who owns the only concrete equipment in the county, and who showed up one morning with a crew and did not make a speech and has never once mentioned it since. He eats there on Tuesdays. He tips too much. Nobody brings it up. Ray Petrosky welded the kennel gates. Hollis Pike has the corner booth in writing in the lease, in a clause a lawyer in Alexandria wrote for free and thought was hilarious. And the stool at the end of the counter has a small brass plate on it that says this seat is never reserved. A year after all of it, Daniel Mercer came through the door on a new leg with no crutch at all, and Kilo went straight past him to the woman behind the counter, the way he always did, the way he had the first morning, and Mercer said what he always said, which was that the dog had made his choice a long time ago, and everybody else was just catching up. Behind him, a man stopped in the doorway. A stranger, tired, holding a duffel, looking at a full room the way people do when they have already decided the answer is no. He asked if there was anywhere he could sit. Every table in the place answered him at once.